Welcome to our Enterprise Blockchain, the Path to Monetization workshop. My name is Guido Molinari, and I'm the managing partner at PhUN Group. In today's workshop, we are going to be discussing with a number of industry leaders that are going to be joining us over the next 3 hours. I'm going to be kicking things off with a brief introduction about us, PhUN Group, and presenting a couple of frameworks that we can use when thinking about some of the insights that the various speakers are going to be sharing with us this afternoon. And then I'm going to be leading the first set of fireside chats, where we're going to have joining us Mariana Gomez de la Villa from ING Bank, Dimitro Migliorati from Banca Mediolanum, Olaf Ransom from Finality International, and Riccardo Turbiani from Microsoft. After that, I'm going to be giving the floor to my colleague Rick Cataldo, who is going to be hosting a session with speakers joining us from Ireland and the US Coast. We're going to be having with us Jaron McGowan from WeTrade, Shyam Nagarajan from IBM, Chen Zher from Ernst & Young, and Daniel Wilson from TradeLens, and Mark Treshock from IBM Pharmaceutical Utility Network. After that, I'm going to be coming back, and with me, there's going to be another set of speakers joining us from the US Midwest and the Rockies. Among them, there's going to be Adam Kaplan from Salesforce, Merrick Vass from United Healthcare, the Synaptic Health Alliance, and David Post from IBM, Trust Your Supplier. We're going to then take some key takeaways together with Kathy Barrera, our founding economist at PhUN Group, and we're going to draw some conclusions together from today's workshop.
Our next speaker is Mark Treshock from IBM. He is the global leader for blockchain solutions, and he's project director of the Pharmaceutical Utility Network, also known as PhUN. So thank you very much. Very happy to have you here today, Mark. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. You're dialing in from the New York area. So just a quick overview on Mark. Mark has worked on a number of different blockchain projects. And he's focused today, we're talking about the PhUN project. He recently presented, I just read this morning, he recently presented on how blockchain and analytics can bring transparency to combat the opioid crisis at the White House, which I'm sure was a fantastic experience. Mark has an MBA and a master's in computer science. So thank you again, Mark, for joining us. And can you give us a 60-second overview on PhUN?
Yes, so first, PhUN stands for the Pharmaceutical Utility Network, and it is a global network to exchange data information related to the pharmaceutical supply chain. It's intended to enhance supply chain integrity. So think track and trace for medicine, anti-counterfeit, anti-diversion, to improve or speed up drug recalls. But it's also intended to improve efficiency and ultimately help the industry transition from what is a linear supply chain where information, is scarce and hoarded, to one that is bidirectional and fluid, which will need to support, the coming world of personalized medicine, among other things.
Wonderful, thank you, Mark. So I have a few questions for you today, and I'm quite excited to hear some of your responses. So first question is talking about network development. I have a question about the actual PhUN utility coming up, but first question is, what is PhUN's approach to network development? Are you guys looking to maximize monetization on the network layer? What is PhUN and IBM's thinking on this, and has it evolved in any way over time?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's one that we get a lot, and our thinking has evolved over time. So the key to PhUN, and we think the key to its success, is the fact that we're not trying to monetize the network itself, but rather what we can all do with the network or on top of the network. And when I say we all, I mean we all, so not just IBM. The network itself will be a utility, and I mean that in the truest sense of the word. And its goal will be accountability, because pharmaceutical supply chain, as you can imagine, is a highly regulated function or activity. So the network itself will need accountability and longevity. the entity that manages this will not itself be profit seeking. And we think that's very important and critical to its success. So conceptually in design, it's more similar to an airport or an interstate highway, right? Another analogy might be the internet itself and how that's evolved to have applications on it versus something like AOL, right? Which when it started was a combination of both the network and the apps together.
Fantastic. Thank you for that overview. I asked this question to the speakers earlier today, and I'm really excited to hear your take on this. So the question is, how did you get the internal go-ahead from management to build and fund a network that in the short term is largely a cost center? In the long term, there's perhaps no certainty that you can turn this into a profit center. Effectively, you may be building a network or the road or the internet that others may profit more from you. How have you, and how can you best position yourselves to compete on effectively your own, or what once was your own network?
Well, thank you. Fortunately, we're not the only ones that will be building this. So we will, participate in it and play a leading role in it. But that is key, that IBM won't be the only company or software development entity or system integrator that participates in this. But more specifically, IBM, as you know, has a long tradition of supporting open source projects. Look to Hyperledger Fabric itself. And we understand, the value in the open source approach. Again, look to our recent acquisition of Red Hat as a proof point for that. The value to IBM long term, right, is as the industry moves towards transitions towards a environment where we need a fluid bidirectional supply chain, IBM and others will build the applications that sit on top of PhUN, right? And we believe this fits well into our strengths, which in addition to blockchain are things like analytics, what we call cognitive, or robotic process automation, or eventually even quantum computing. That's why IBM is adopting this approach.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mark, for that overview. Now, looking specifically at the PhUN network, we've talked a little bit about how maybe due to regulatory requirements and these sorts of things, that the pharma industry is really ripe for, and it really needs something similar to a blockchain to maybe unlock additional value or improvements. So what particularly about the pharma industry attracts you guys to it?
If I were to sit back and think of what would be the perfect application of blockchain, it might be the pharmaceutical supply chain, because it's inherently global from the start. It's complicated, but it also requires accountability and immutability, right? If you think about how pharmaceuticals are manufactured, it's very important that we're able to trace them from when they go from raw materials all the way through the process to become a finished drug and ultimately in the hands of the consumer, right? So there's a great need for immutability in the pharmaceutical industry. Also the need to be able to trace things quickly back to their source of origin, right? In the event of something like a product recall, or, we see all over the world, not so much in the United States, but all over the world, there's tremendous problems with counterfeit medication, right? Which is a terrible thing. And a network like this could help address that.
Wonderful. That's a great segue to our next question here, which is looking at the global situation that we're in today with the COVID-19 pandemic. What is PhUN's approach to this? What are you guys working on today?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and we see in particular with the pandemic as it relates to PhUN. I'll talk about the development of the vaccine, right? The development projects that are underway for the COVID vaccine and what it will ultimately mean to distribute that. So if we step back and think about it, we'll need roughly 15 billion doses of the vaccine to vaccinate more or less the entire world population. It will take several years, many years perhaps, for the industry to manufacture enough doses to satisfy that demand, once the vaccine is developed. And during that period, I think this will become one of the most counterfeited products in history. So the market will be flooded. And we already see examples of this, and we don't have an actual vaccine yet, and people are purporting to have a real one. So the market will be flooded with counterfeit vaccines, which will of course be horrible. And unlocking this siloed information through a network such as PhUN could help address that. But it can also help us improve the efficiency of the process, right? So vaccines, they have a complex supply chain. There will be challenges in producing this number of vaccines. Once they're completed, they need to be stored in a temperature-controlled environment until they're administered. And again, today, we have processes to do this, but they're siloed and fragmented, and therefore not as efficient as they could be, right? And we feel that with a network like PhUN that could help unlock this siloed information, we can make a material difference in collectively the industry in the production of the vaccine and how many doses reach patients and are effective, because they've been maintained under the proper conditions. So we're very excited and committed to that.
I imagine with that increase of efficiency and reduction in terms of counterfeiting, it's almost like we're producing the vaccines theoretically at a faster rate.
We're getting more, yes, we're getting more bang for our buck. If we could prevent, let's say 10% of the vaccines that are produced, if we could prevent them from spoiling because they're not maintained properly in the refrigerated conditions that they need, that's 10% extra vaccines that we have that could go to people, right? And we think that will make a material difference in how this vaccine gets rolled out around the world.
So Mark, I have a question. I'm sorry, this one's on the fly, but I think it's quite interesting. So you guys have developed this network layer, right? And now it's a time you're launching these killer apps. How quickly can you guys respond to a crisis or an opportunity such as COVID and launch an app specifically around this? Is this a pivot? Is this what is the process in terms of identification to go to market?
Well, the PhUN network, the PhUN network itself is still in development. It's in the early stages of development. And you could think of the use cases that I just said, which were around anti-counterfeit and cold chain and supply chain specifically for the vaccine. You could think of those as a subset of what the PhUN network would address anyway, right? So it's that we're now trying to be very focused on the vaccine because there's an urgent need, for this. And these are use cases that we were talking about in a broader sense anyway, right? But now we're focused on this. The vaccine itself should start to come to market next year, right? And we feel it's reasonable to get some of these applications up and running in and around then, right? At least to bring some more control to the process than we have today.